All right, folks, checking in here. It's been a couple weeks. I apologize. As you might remember, I went away for about a week. My wife and I were checking out Colorado to see if it was a viable place for us to move. She's wanting to go back to school. And so we checked out a school for her there, acupuncture. She's in the healing arts. And we were also just looking at like schools for our daughters, that sort of thing, a little bit looking at jobs. So it's looking pretty positive. I mean, it's looking like we're going to be doing a big move this summer to the Front Range area, the Denver metro area. Denver is a... first of all, I like the Broncos much more than I like the Patriots, so that's a good thing. Denver's, it's pretty ugly overall. It's very sprawling. Just the sprawl of it is pretty ugly. And a lot of Western, after living in New England, you get all these nice old architecture and New England homes, and it's just a little bit, that will take some adjusting. But, there's so many wonderful things about that area. I mean, perhaps most especially the natural beauty, the mountains. If you like hiking or walking, it's just an amazing place to live, and I'm really excited about that because I do really like hiking and walking. And I think I will be able to more easily have a good, healthy routine there. It's also, there's just so much. I mean, I live in rural New Hampshire right now, and there's so much lacking. I mean, there's so many nice things about it, but I do really miss having more options. Whether it's anything from used bookstores and coffee shops to go to cultural events, to diversity of people. I've lived most of my adult life in medium towns to cities. A lot of years in Portland, Oregon, where there's just a lot. I lived in Portland, Oregon for a little more than half of the 90s and into the aughties. Actually about half of the 90s, half of the aughties. Burlington, Vermont, Boulder, Colorado. I've lived in Boulder area 3 times already, so it's interesting. I'm going back a 4th time. That's a long story. So that's all good. A couple other things. Let's see. I have what was called the Blackbird Debacle. This actually happened before I left. I dropped my Breitling Blackbird, and I blame using the leather strap. I had it on the Kohler app, which is a great strap. But I was in my kitchen, and I was, when I go and cook or do the dishes, I take off my watch unless I'm wearing, say, the Seiko Black Monster, right? And I was taking it off, and it just slipped right out of my hands. And, from about 4 to 5 feet, it fell onto hard tile. And, at first I thought everything was okay, and then I saw that one of the loom markers had come off. And there was definitely a dent in one of the rider tabs. And, and I was thinking, oh man, what a pain in the ass, but this is probably something that can be easily fixed. And I actually think it could be easily fixed by a watch repair person who was willing to do it. But, I did some research online. I checked out Breitling Source, asked a question there, and really people were recommending that I send it into, and then I called somebody. I called a watchmaker in my state, and he was basically saying that, you can't get the parts, so he can't service Breitling anymore. And that's really just, if this had happened a few weeks ago, back in December, he probably could have done it. But, because of this whole Swiss debacle of the Swiss companies not giving independent watchmakers access to their parts, it's not just Breitling that's doing this. So, I was saying, well, can you just open it up and glue the tab back on, And he's like, well, not really. And so he recommended that I send it into Breitling USA, which is it's in Connecticut. So I sent it to Breitling USA, and they they sent me a list of stuff that was $1,400 because they want, whenever they open up the case, first of all, the problem is they won't just fix the tab marker, they have to put on a new dial. So that in and of itself, a new dial is like $500. I know, it's a lot. And then to even do that, they want to give it a full service, which is $850 for a full Breitling service. And then the rider tab is $72. So the total was $1,400. And I was really discouraged at first. You know, it was really kind of depressing. I mean, that's the cost of a used Seiko Marine Master. So my initial impulse was kind of to say to Breitling and have it shipped back to me, and then you know, find somebody. There are people out there that do independent work. I'm sure that somebody would be happy to open it up and glue the tab back on. Now, but the thing is, I've come to realize that that's my favorite watch. That Blackbird is just it's my favorite watch. I love it. I want to keep it for as long as I'm here, probably. And let's see, it last had a service about 4 or 5 years ago, so it's coming up. They say every 5 years. It's kind of like oil changes. I tend to add 50%, so I think when they say every 5 years, I think every 7 or 8 years is fine, especially if you're rotating with other watches. And you might even, you know, some people feel like the whole servicing thing is totally ridiculous. That it's, you know, it's one of those things. It's like going to a car mechanic and say, do you need to do any work on my car? And they'll be like, yeah, sure. So I would really, like, for me, I think every 10 years, to be honest, is probably fine for servicing. But I don't know. I guess there was just something in me that felt like I want this to be done right. And I also kind of like the idea of getting a brand new Blackbird back. When they do the full service, they do a full polish, brushing, put in new screws in the bezel. They, you know, and also to really take care of this watch. If I get a service done now in 2016, I won't, you know, it'll be 2025 or so until I need to get it done again. So I just decided to go ahead and do what Breitling suggested and just go for the whole thing. Now, I guess, you know, the bad news is that I was really thinking of the money that I make from selling some watches, some quote unquote lesser watches. I'm going to sell the Hamilton, the Citizen, Atessa, and the Perpetual. That was going to go to either a Seiko Marine Master or a Longines Heritage chronograph. And because we're moving, I can't do that. So that money that I'd be making from those watches is going straight to this Breitling repair. And that's just how it is. That's the way of the world. So anyways, that's the Blackbird debacle or disaster of 2016. You know, it had to happen eventually. I had to have an experience. You know, I have had watches, and I've owned like 80 or more watches. I've had watches, mainly Invictas, that had issues back in the day. And then more recently, you know, I just woke up one day and my Orient revolver had a huge chip on the crystal. No idea how it happened. I must have hit a doorknob or hit the faucet while washing dishes or something like that and just not even noticed. So that's my only experience with like having, you know, I haven't had any watches serviced. I haven't had any major repairs done. You know, the other thing that people were saying is that if you dropped a watch hard enough that one of the loom markers came off, chances are there could be internal damage. Now, the watch ran as far as I could tell after that happened, although I didn't wind it because I just wanted to let it rest because it was swimming around. I didn't want it to get snagged on it. So, you know, people were saying, you know, some of the jewels could be cracked. There could be gaskets misplaced. I mean, there's just things that could happen. So I didn't want to take any chances with the bottom line. You know, I could send it into some other watch repair place, get only the basics done for a couple $100, and then, down the line there's major issues and the movement's, you know, trashed. So I think this is the way. I already decided. It's they hopefully are starting soon. I won't get it back for 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm also kind of curious. I'm just kind of curious. I'm getting a freshly serviced watch. It's kind of like a new watch, you know. All right, well, that's going to be it for now. I've arrived at my first destination. I will check in a moment again. Later. All right, folks, checking in here. It's been a couple weeks. I apologize. As you might remember, I went away for about a week. My wife and I were checking out Colorado to see if it was a viable place for us to move. She's wanting to go back to school. And so we checked out a school for her there, acupuncture. She's in the healing arts. And we were also overall, it's very sprawling, just the sprawl of it is pretty ugly. And a lot of Western, you know, after living in New England, you get all these nice old architecture and New England homes, and it's just a little bit, just looking at like schools for our daughters, that sort of thing, a little bit looking at jobs. So it's looking pretty positive. I mean, it's looking like we're going to be doing a big move this summer to the Front Range area, the Denver metro area. It's, you know, Denver is a, first of all, I like the Broncos much more than I like the Patriots, so that's a good thing. Denver's, it's pretty ugly.